Back to the matter of the Integrity Commission. Chairman of the Integrity Commission, retired Justice Carol Lawrence Beswick, says she needs more information to address concerns raised by the leaders of the government business in the lower and upper houses of Parliament. Leader of government business in the Parliament, Edmund Bartlett, and leader of government business in the Senate, Kamina Johnson-Smith, wrote a joint letter to Mrs. Lawrence Beswick last week, Friday. The two senior parliamentarians voiced their displeasure with the selection of Roneiph Lawrence as acting director of corruption prosecution and his potential permanent appointment to the post. Mrs. Lawrence Beswick wrote a response to the senior parliamentarians on Monday. More in this report. In a letter last Friday, leaders of government business in the upper and lower houses, Edmund Bartlett and Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith, wrote to retired Justice Carol Lawrence Beswick registering particular and serious concerns held by their government colleagues. These include the appointment of Mr. Roneiph Lawrence as Acting Director of Corruption Prosecution. Mr. Lawrence has been styled by General Secretary of the People's National Party, Dr. Dayton Campbell, as his friend of over 20 years in a social media post on January 26 of this year. Dr. Campbell's post contained a photograph of him in the company of Roneiph Lawrence at what appeared to be Lawrence's wedding. The two senior legislators says it's a matter of public record that in late 2024, Dr. Campbell used a political platform to make particular comments about a case which it subsequently came to public attention was being considered for investigation by the Integrity Commission. Bartlett and Johnson-Smith tell Justice Lawrence Beswick that they do not for a moment question the professional qualifications of Roneiph Lawrence. But they say, given his 20-year friendship with the PNP General Secretary, any decision taken by Roneiph Lawrence concerning members of the political fraternity will certainly be open to question. However, Justice Lawrence Beswick says any such interrogation would have to be conducted as fairly, impartially, and transparently as possible. She says justice would no doubt have to be done not only in the eyes of the parliamentarians, but also in the eyes of the persons against whom a complaint or allegation is being made. The retired justice says a primary component of a carefully conducted interrogation is relevant cogent evidence. She says in the view of the fact that they agree that they do not question any individual's constitutional right of association, any question about Lawrence's decision-making and or suitability for filling the post must therefore be considered with that right in mind. She says any decision taken by the Commission should be open to be questioned by the public, including political parties, as to the manner in and the basis on which the decision was taken. She goes on to say the Commission is mindful of the fact that its decisions are open to scrutiny and thus operates under the policy that any conflicts of interest are declared, and where they exist, the employee recuses him or herself and thereafter has nothing to do with that particular matter. Further, in responding to the concerns regarding the utterances of Dr. Dayton Campbell, the Commission chairman says their description lacks sufficient details to allow her to determine of what they speak. Siobhan Campbell for Nationwide News. Well, joining us to discuss this further will be member of the JLP's Communication Task Force, Senator Marlon Morgan, and political commentator and editor-in-chief of the Western Mirror, Lloyd B. Smith, after this break. Marlon Morgan, and political commentator and editor-in-chief at the Western Mirror, Lloyd B. Smith. Good
Good
evening,
evening,
gentlemen.
gentlemen. Evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening to you both. Let's start with you, Marlon Morgan. Your colleagues in the Senate and the lower house raised some concerns. The Integrity Commission chairman is suggesting that based on what was provided to her, she does not feel there's enough information for her to move forward with either an inquiry.
Well, at the very outset, Siobhan, I'd want to indicate that the correspondence written by jointly the leader of government business in the Senate and, of course, the lower house does not essentially seek to castigate or impugn the Integrity Commission. We know that conversations like these may conjure up in the mind of some that the JLP is fighting against the Integrity Commission. That is not the case. We respect the Integrity Commission as a commission of the Parliament, and we appreciate the role that it has to play in our body politic. Suffice it to say, however, having regard to the correspondence from the Integrity Commission over the signature of the newly minted chairman, retired Justice Carol Lawrence Beswick, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and, of course, the Minister of Tourism will be considering the correspondence and make a determination as to their response, because we know that it is in the public's interest in this matter for there to be appropriate ventilation, because for the avoidance of any doubt, the Integrity Commission is too crucial a commission in terms of serving as guardians of accountability and faithful stewardship in high office. We know that Jamaica has been bedeviled by allegations of and perceptions vis-a-vis corruption, and as such, we know the role the Integrity Commission plays, the fact that the declarations have to be certified, and that kind of thing. And so that is welcomed. However, we believe that it has to be, a premium has to be placed on ensuring that the persons who staff the commission are persons who are essentially divest of any perception of a conflict of interest. And what do I mean by that? We note in this case that based on Dr. Dayton Campbell's own assertions, the gentleman who has recently been elevated to act as Director of Corruption Prosecution at the Integrity Commission, Mr. Roneiph Lawrence, against whom we cast no aspersions. We in the JLP do not impugn the gentleman's professional qualifications. What we're simply saying here is, having regard to the fact that the Director of Corruption Prosecution will be called on from time to time to make critical decisions and determinations, we would not want any specter or any notion of bias or sympathies toward Dr. Campbell based on the relationship that the two gentlemen have, based on Dr. Campbell's own assertion. They are brothers essentially, over 20 years of friendship as having been persons associated with Chancellor Hall and the Mona campus. So just to be very clear, we do not impugn the capacity of Roneiph Lawrence, but we would not want to have a situation where members of the public looking on would have any notion of bias having regard to any decision or non-decision taken by Roneiph Lawrence in his capacity as Director of Corruption Prosecution, albeit acting at this time.
Thank you, Senator Morgan. And Lloyd B. Smith, from your own perspective, what do you see as the best way forward now that the members, the leaders of both houses of the government have received the response from the chair of the Integrity Commission?
Well, first of all, I think that the chairman's response was most judicious and full of much common sense. And against that backdrop, I would want to think that the JLP should be cautious in what it is doing. And I say this against the backdrop that we are a very small society. Everybody knows just about everybody. And we have to be careful, therefore, that we do not reach a point in our political architecture where it's not going to be easy for us to find maybe a Mother Teresa or a John the Baptist. I mean, all of us, by association, whether socially, professionally, or otherwise, or politically for that matter, exist in a very small space. So I think that has to be borne in mind. I would want to go along with the suggestion of Milady in that more evidence should be put on the table as to why. Because it's interesting that Senator Morgan says that they do not question this gentleman's professionalism. And in my books, when you act professionally in the
professional qualifications, actually.
Oh, you meant qualification, because I was going to say that when you act professionally, then you are...
Yeah, because I don't know that I'm in a position to speak definitively as to his professionalism.
Mm-hmm. So you're just speaking of his perfect... Okay, well, at least you clarified that in my mind. But I still think that there would need to be more cogent evidence to bring this matter to closure, because are you saying in essence that he ought not to be placed in that position in the very final analysis? Is that what is being said? Because that is not clear to me. Or you're just raising this objection purely for political mileage, or,
So just for the avoidance of any doubt, Siobhan, Prof. Hope, and of course my good friend Lloyd B. The JLPs, and of course by way of the correspondence from Kamina Johnson-Smith and Edmund Bartlett is not raising an issue for any political mileage, because that would do the public conversation a disservice. Indeed, that would do the interest of the public and governance in the country a disservice. And so we would not even suggest or want the suggestion to be inferred, yes, that is what is driving the considerations and the request here. What we're standing on is a platform of wanting to see the Integrity Commission being above board, being staffed by persons who are not only professional and well suited to serve, but there is no question, as it were, as to their impartiality and, of course, their judgment and the fact that they have no conflict of interest. That's a clear point we're making here. So one of the things we shouldn't avoid or discount in this conversation, lady and gentlemen, is the context within which we're operating. Lord B will appreciate very well that for the past 3 or so years, what we have had is essentially a weaponization of the IC. No fault of the IC in terms of, what the PNP has done in relation to the matter of the Prime Minister's statutory declarations not being certified. Certainly when the PNP started to raise this on the political stump, that would not have been a fault of the IC. However, what we have seen is a weaponization of the IC's work, and especially in circumstances where Julian Robinson said what he said in August of 2024, where he essentially, on the occasion of speaking at the PNP Women's Movement Conference on August 17 or 18 of 2024, he basically telegraphed to listeners and the public at large that we're likely to have elections later in 2024, because when Parliament resumes, he said, in September, a report from the Integrity Commission will be tabled. How would Julian Robinson have known that? Now, certainly, we are not suggesting that any particular officer at the IC may have tipped off Julian Robinson, and indeed Dayton Campbell, who appeared on Nationwide sometime in early September, and essentially challenged what Cliff and I believe Ricardo Brooks at the time were saying when they were speaking about the accounts of Mr. Holness's parents. Dayton Campbell on that program made mention of the findings of the IC being, or this issue being about much more than Andrew Holness's parents' bank accounts. What would have caused Dayton Campbell to have been in such a position to speak so definitively and conclusively on that matter? These things raises questions in the minds of the public, and it may serve to erode public confidence in this institution in which such high responsibility and expectations are vested. And that's a key point we're making. Too much is at stake with the IC for there to be any whiff or any hint of untoward or improper motive in terms of the carriage of its mandate. And we have seen copious examples that erode public confidence, not least being the comments of the incumbent executive director at the IC, Greg Christie, on the occasion of the shooting of an IC staffer, where the journalist put a question to him and Greg Christie retorted in no uncertain terms, asked the government that. And when the journalist, taken aback, asked him what does he mean by that, Greg Christie responded to the journalist and said, ask them what that means.
Senator Morgan, we have to bring Lloyd B back into the conversation, yes, because of course, when you speak about the kind of scrutiny that the Integrity Commission has been under over the past year or the public has become very embroiled and connected to the conversations around it, and so Lloyd B, what do you think, or how do you think the move forward to appoint individuals to these positions in the IC has to be treated, especially within the kind of political climate that we're working through right now? We are looking at an election sometime soon.
Well, I think due diligence has to be done.
Yes.
Sufficient interrogations and so on must be done. What is unfortunate at this point is that the matter is now being tested and tried in the court of public opinion. Mm-hmm. And that is where I have a difficulty, because, as I said before, we are a small society, and the very fact that this issue has now been raised, it would have put the gentleman in question into a most, invidious position. And I don't know if that is fair to him. And so I would have thought that there would have to be more subtle and, behind the scenes way in which dialogue could have taken place. And as the milady has suggested, that in instances where in the future certain cases may come to the fore, that if necessary he would recuse himself from those matters so as not to leave any cloud of suspicion or uncertainty. Because I do believe, as I said, that it's going to be extremely difficult in the very finance. Because today it is the JLP saying this. Tomorrow it could be the PMP saying the very same thing about another person in another position within the IC. So I think a great deal of care has to be taken here. And what I would love to see is greater dialogue, as well as what Milady suggested, that Marlon here has given us a number of instances which he believes substantiate the JLP's position. I don't know if these were put within the context of his, or rather the letter that was sent by Mr. Bartlett and Minister Smith. But I think in the very finances, much more needs to be done behind the scenes quietly, rather than using this thing, the public sphere, to deal with it, because we know right now in this silly season there's heightened political rivalry, and no matter how you spin this thing, Marlon is going to come across as a potential witch hunt. That's how I see it.
But Mr. Lloyd-B, the concern there raised regarding the necessity to deal with these matters quietly, isn't that abundantly the problem as it stands now? Because up to this point, the Integrity Commission has operated somewhat in a very closed-door manner, providing very little in terms of the way of information to the public as to its operations. And that itself has fostered this almost suspicion from certain aspects of the political directorate as well as the general public. Shouldn't there be at least an acknowledgement on the part of the Commission that there are concerns on the part of the political directorate and the people, and that they will be looking into them?
Yeah. Your point may well be taken, but this is why we could extend this to take in the whole matter of the gag clause, and then we would be entering another domain of political intrigue and obfuscation. I will maintain that the Integrity Commission, to me, it has to be seen as removed somewhat from, the general discourse in the political arena, because otherwise it will continue to be a political football, and it will be hit on either side, depending on who is in power and who is not in power, depending on, that's how I see it. And I frankly believe, as I said, that at this stage, the matter could have been dealt with privately behind, and then if at some point there was no resolution satisfactory, then you could go into the public domain. The fact that it is now thrust into the public domain, I don't see it having any resolution that is going to be totally favorable, unless, of course, the goodly gentleman resigns from the post. What else is the JLP asking for? Is that what the JLP really wants? Say so, then you take it from there.
But I ask you, Lord B, can he operate in a position, as you said, where he would be required, due to the concerns raised by the government, that his affiliations with Dr. Dayton Campbell may call into question his ability to deal with the political directorate in a fair manner? Would it then be possible for him to do his job? I mean, would he then have to recuse himself from any matter regarding a parliamentarian?
So this is why I'm asking, is it that the JLP is saying he should not be there? If that is the case, then say so. And then he would have his own constitutional right, and the matter may well have to be taken to the courts to have it resolved. I don't know. I mean...
Well, Siobhan, Lord B would appreciate, and it is an observation made by retired Justice Lawrence Beswick, yes, in her correspondence of even date, regarding no entity or authority, separate and apart from the court, consequent on judicial review, should direct the Integrity Commission. And so the Jamaica Labour Party, for which I speak, is not arrogating unto itself a power to direct the IC in relation to the good gentleman, Mr. Roneiph Lawrence. So just to be very clear, the correspondence of Friday last seeks essentially to invite the IC to attend upon this issue, to interrogate the circumstances surrounding this gentleman, Roneiph Lawrence, and of course, an apparent relationship insofar as a friendship, a certain association between himself and a gentleman who serves as the CEO of one of the major political parties here in Jamaica, the PNP's Dayton Campbell. So just to be very clear, staffing is an issue that the IC has to pay particular attention to. We would have seen in recent months at one of the oversight committee meetings for the IC, Greg Christie, when a question was put to him about Ryan Evans, a gentleman who is known to have had, yes, and Ryan Evans does not deny it, certain antecedents in terms of having served as an advisor, political advisor as it were, to then Minister Dr. Peter Phillips. It should be that in staffing the Integrity Commission, in bringing members on board, takes more definitive and careful steps to consider the antecedents of persons, because you want the entity to be staffed by persons in whom there can be no question as to political sympathies or potential improper motive on the part of the person. Because you wouldn't want a member of the public to feel that, listen, Ryan Evans acted in this way, or Kevin Stevenson, or indeed Roneiph Lawrence acted in a particular way because of something that was operating on their mind other than their good judgment and professionalism. And we have seen in the case of the IC where Mrs. Prince Kamika exercise the judgment in relation to not averring charges. Yes? However, based on what has come to public light, there are functionaries in the IC, yes, who would have had a variance of opinion from her, certainly Kevin Stevens, insofar as making a recommendation to her for charges in relation to wholeness and the issue of his parents' bank accounts. Kevin Stevenson was of one mind, and as we have since come to see, to recognize and appreciate, Mrs. Prince Kamika was of a different mind in terms of the likelihood of, successful prosecution and the premium of going in that direction. So you would not want to have decisions being taken by people to be open to the specter of bias or political sympathies in particular. And Ryan Evans, a gentleman who served as an advisor to Peter Phillips, really and truly in terms of the recruitment process, should have, been flagged and perhaps not considered for appointment, because you want the entity to be sterile and absolutely divest of any question on the part.
Senator Morgan, I think I hear Lloyd be saying this, and I did repeat this last Friday when the letter was discussed here on Nationwide, that Jamaica is a very small society, and the pool of persons that you're going to choose from for some of these high-profile positions tends to be people who may know each other casually, probably have attended school together, but let me make the point, and may have some kind of association with each other. Being an advisor to someone is at a different level, maybe from having a friendship with someone else or a casual relationship. So I think, how do you suggest then that we go forward to ensure that the kind of 360-degree evaluation is done so that persons coming into these posts are then free of any major attachment that might seemingly prejudice their own professionalism?
Which is why, Prof, I pointed to process. In other words, and just for the benefit of the listeners to be very clear, what I am commending to the Integrity Commission, to the extent that it is an office that discharges an important mandate, and it has to be an entity that wins the trust and confidence of the public, is for it to have a fit and proper, a fit-for-purpose recruitment process where appropriate checks are made, appropriate inquiries are made as to persons' antecedents, because I am sure it would have popped up or ought to have popped up on Ryan Evans' resume that the gentleman, is essentially someone who had proximity to an active politician and perhaps would not be the best candidate to serve as the Director of Corruption Prevention at the Integrity Commission as he is serving today. And for Greg Christie to have responded to that question put to him at the oversight committee meeting in the way he did, I believe it leaves much to be desired, and it was essentially a slap in the face of members of the public in particular who have legitimate concerns and legitimate questions. We do not want to have an IC where there is this wedge where you have one segment of the population believing that, there are some persons who are staffing the IC who are not essentially fit for purpose. And another segment.
Senator Morgan, you're always going to have that. Let's be realistic here. As I said, you might as well suggest...
That's an excellent point, Lloyd B.
No,
that's an excellent point. We're always going to have that.
Yes.
No, let me allow you, because there's an observation I want to make. You're always going to have persons having, an angst or a grievance one way or another. However, it should not be undergirded by any, substantial evidence or what you would call, anything that has veracity, as it were. And I have cited examples in this case of some many instances and many developments in relation to the IC that strains confidence and serves to erode public trust in the entity. Not least some comments by Christie, not least the fact that it is alleged that Prince Kamika is someone who was, alienated perhaps, or persons took a dim view of her in the IC because she elected to not charge the Prime Minister in relation to the illicit enrichment matter, or indeed in relation to his parents' bank accounts.
And
these are real issues.
And Lloyd B, I would like to, bring you in here, because is that an unfair request? As you put it, the IC should be above the political fracas in almost all doubt. It should be reasonably isolated from that level of scrutiny. So shouldn't it then be in a situation where the people who staff the Integrity Commission should be people to, at the very minimum, we cannot find, as the Senate put it, veracity in claims that they have prior links to of political affiliation?
Yes, but it is still a difficult proposition.
Yes, Lloyd, it is a difficult proposition, but it's a body similar to the judiciary. As put, it is the only body above it that the Integrity Commission takes instruction from, is the judiciary. A body that highly placed, do you not believe that it should face a higher level of scrutiny?
Absolutely, but the Honourable Justice Beswick has left it open. She hasn't closed it on this matter. Her letter ends with all she's asking for is cogent and unequivocal information. No. The question that must be asked, can Senator Morgan, along with his colleagues, provide that information to the Commission so that, her ladyship can act accordingly and the Commission can then take the matter further. Just saying that he's a very good friend of Dr. Campbell, I don't know if that is sufficient for such, a monumental decision to be taken, which would mean that he would have to be fired. So all I'm saying here is we must tread softly, and sometimes diplomacy behind the scenes negotiations would have been better rather than thrusting this thing into the public domain at a time when partisan, flare-ups are now so common and everybody's pointing fingers at everybody. And I don't know if this issue can be sufficiently dealt with within the court of public opinion. That's my view.
But then I put it to you, Marlon Morgan. There, Mr. Lloyd B raises a good point regarding what exactly is it that the JLP, or better yet, maybe say the government parliamentarians are after. Would you, and I put it specifically to you, not any other member of the parliamentarians, but you specifically, would you be comfortable as a senator having your statutory declarations and your matters relating to the conduct of your office be scrutinized by Roneiph Lawrence if he becomes the permanent appointment as Director of Corruption Prosecutions?
Well, I would respond in the affirmative by saying I would, because the idea is that the gentleman may be eminently qualified to serve as the Director of Corruption and Prosecution at the IC. However, having regard to the information that we now have in terms of the close association between this gentleman and a person who has a certain political agenda, that being the PNP's General Secretary, I would perhaps have live and real concerns as to, yes, whether any decision taken by this gentleman in relation to matters brought or referred to his office by the Director of Investigation in relation to me as a parliamentarian is something that does not have untoward considerations operating on his mind. So in short, his sympathies to Dr. Campbell, real or perceived, and or malice or improper motive on his part, and what makes this matter that much more contentious, gentlemen and lady, is that the mere fact that this issue has been raised in the public domain as it has in recent days, it is all the more reason why serious interrogation has to be made by the IC into the incumbency, albeit acting, of Roneiph Lawrence. Because Roneiph Lawrence, based on even this very discussion now, may well have reasons to exhibit malice toward GLP parliamentarians, myself included. Now, thankfully, I can speak unequivocally and definitively that I will have and shall have nothing untoward in relation to my stewardship and my financial affairs, certainly in relation to any public office that would cause me, yes, to essentially be in any particular adverse spot. But just to be very clear, the public, I keep coming back to this point, the public has to have a degree of confidence in looking on that, listen, the IC is staffed and outfitted by persons who are operating above the political fray or above the political melee and fracas, using Lloyd B's own words.
Gentlemen, we have to move towards a wrap up, but as Lloyd B is saying, and as the letter from her ladyship is suggesting, Senator Morgan, the ball is now in the court of, the leaders of government business in the upper and lower house to provide the information, the cogent information, so that that process that Senator Morgan you're asking for can be taken to some conclusion.
And we appreciate that.
Yes.
We appreciate that, and I trust that Edmund Bartlett and Kamina Johnson-Smith will take the matter under advisement.
There's just one quick question I want to ask, though. I'm not sure about the center, but maybe you're going to let my ignorance. Is it that this gentleman would unilaterally make any decision with respect to your statutory? Is there some way that these things would be sufficiently dealt with by the commission in totality and not just him?
That's an excellent question, Lloyd B. I know it's an excellent question. Keisha Prince Kamika would have brought her professionalism and her capacity and experience as a learned prosecutor to bear in making her determination, yes? However, we see that there are some folks, her former colleagues at the IC, who essentially took umbrage to the very thing that she did. And she did it not in an arbitrary way, but in a painstaking and professional way. I am prepared to submit.
Allegedly, Senator Morgan.
Yes, I think we have to, but there seems to be a lot more that we have to discuss around this issue.
That's an excellent
gentlemen.
question by Lloyd B. just now.
Yes.
Prince Kamika did what she did, and some people took exception and umbrage to it.
So the team is working in different directions in some instances, and perhaps you're suggesting that to clarify and ensure that for the way forward the team works with more consensus, that the scrutiny is at the
they
highest
must
level.
respect the work of each other, because
Yes.
that is why the IC has been constituted in the way it has. Kevin Stevens is the Director of Investigations. You can't be the head cook and bottle wash. You can't be the person who is judge, juror, and executioner. You undertake your investigation. You are to do your investigation without malice. And of course, you come up with your findings and you make a referral to the Director of Corruption Prosecution. That ball ends there, because it is now for the Director of Corruption Prosecution to use his or her experience and expertise as a prosecutor to determine and come up with a ruling based on the evidence, not the figment of their imagination. Yes?
And
so I would commend those words this evening to Kevin Stevenson.
But wouldn't any ruling be made be subject to redress?
You have redress by way of judicial review. It's the courts you have to seek redress, Lloyd B, as Prime Minister Andrew Holness has done.
Indeed. So we may be beating our head against the wall in the final analysis.
No. But and Lloyd B, gentlemen and lady, Lloyd B is making a very excellent point here again, because just for the benefit of the listeners, the rulings of the Director of Corruption Prosecution and indeed any other functionary of the IC is of considerable moment, because as we know, separate and apart from successful prosecution, just the mere notion of being charged can be very perilous in the body politic. If the Prime Minister, for example, were to be charged, it is something that is of a nature and on a scale that may topple a government. So although there is remedy at the court by way of judicial review, ladies and gentlemen, let's be very clear, the very ruling by the Director of Corruption Prosecution may be of considerable moment, because it may cause the position of an incumbent, whether it is opposition leader, Prime Minister, or a Minister of Government, yes, to become untenable. So it is not a light matter and a light issue. We have to understand what we're saying here. These are very serious office and very serious powers, folks, are vested in the Integrity Commission. We need to understand that. These people make rulings, and the rulings are of considerable moment. As we have seen in the case of Andrew Michael Holness, the Director of Investigation did a lot of editorializing in his report that was essentially aimed at, in our view, or at least in my view, casting, raising all kinds of issues. And his findings did not establish impropriety on the part of the Prime Minister. He established no impropriety, and yet he did not elect to certify the gentleman's declarations. He instead invoked TAJ and invoked FID. And we believe, as the Prime Minister's judicial action is seeking to do, we believe that the IC, in the case of Kevin Stevenson, acted outside of its remit, acted ultra vires.
And, well, Marlon, I think you have to be careful, though, because it's the
a charge, Lloyd B, can topple a government. Let us understand that. So Roneiph Lawrence can charge the Prime Minister tomorrow morning on any matter that comes to his desk that has the effect of making the Prime Minister's position untenable invariably, or any other person, myself included.
And what if it turns out that this is so? Wouldn't his position also become untenable?
Well, there you go. But the damage would have already been done, Lloyd B. Let us understand what is being communicated here.
Gentlemen.
If a person's position becomes untenable based on arbitrary rulings, that's problematic. I'm guided, Siobhan. All the best, my brother.
Thank you, Siobhan. Thank you, gentlemen. Yes.
That is Senator Marlon Morgan. He is a member of the Jail Peace Communication Task Force and political commentator and editor-chief of the Western Mirror, Lloyd B. Smith. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you, gentlemen.
It's clear that this matter regarding the Integrity Commission is not going to be settled this evening or anytime soon, unfortunately.
Yes.
But more after this break, listeners.
Your course name?
It is Professor Donohope.
You can't just say Prof Hope. Prof Hope. That's a Prof Hope. Yes, or Miss Hope. Yes, we've got with that.
When the news break that Mrs. Prince Kamika cannot reapply for a job, I called a lady friend, and I said it to her. I said, it's not true. I said, 5 o'clock, she will bring it. She said, I can't believe, I would not believe. So I will have to listen to TV news. I said, it is true, but then swap black folks monkey. Because the Chief Justice was there, and they talk about the illicit 6. And Margot have been holding the hammer in the Andrew Holness with it. Because none of them has done that side, and jail police supporters, and Andrew is one of them. They did not stop him from saying it. So from there, I just look at it and said, this man is no different from the Chief Justice. They are just lying. I don't believe, because she is the one who prevent them from saying that Andrew is a thief. Because if they had ruled, all of them say, yes, we steal the money. The next thing we have to resign, you know. And they would use you to bring him down and he would have to call election. That was the plan. It didn't happen. They have been doing these things for the longest while. Next thing they do, under the PMP administration, they deliberately destroy the economy to a point where gangs reach up to 350. And Jamaica was known as the murder capital of the world. And this government is the one that brings down the gangs. Yet, Margot and the PMP go ahead and carry the government to court to get rid of SOE, knowing it's only 14,000 police was in the country at that time, and they couldn't. That was just a dent to fight crime. So what the plan was, if they get rid of SOE, crime would have to increase, and when crime increase, they use it to bring down the government to election. These are the policies that play. So in my opinion, you see the so-called Intel Commission, these people, not one that they need to scrap it. This is a set of people that have there, they need to get rid of completely, regardless of we need it. You see the so-called glad clause that they have there, it need to go as well because of it. Nobody can question them, so they can tell any amount of lies and people believe. We need to get rid of these set of people. If we can't get some people with justice, they need to just get rid of it at done, even though we need it.
All right, Richie. I'm glad that you said that this is your opinion, because I will have to depart with you. I would hate to think any member of our political directorate would be so interested in working against the betterment of the country that they would deliberately, as you said, try to undermine the crime fighting effort. So I'm going to take that as your opinion and leave it at that, Richie, please.
Listen. It was only 14,000 police in the country.
All right, Richie. I hear you. And as I said, I'm not taking away your opinion. It's just I'm going to depart with you on that opinion. That is all. Can we accept that?
Well, listen to me. I bet you majority of people will agree with me.
We have to agree to disagree, Richie, but thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Okay, sir.
Thank you so much.
All right.
We have Carl on the line.
Good evening, Miss Hope.
Good evening, Carl. Good evening.
Evening, Carl.
Yes.
If you hear all the time people used to say you can't throw wine in a dirty glass.
I think it's a dirty skin or something like that, right?
Well, wine
like
skin.
Old wine in it's a new wine in
Old
an
wine
old
in
skin.
new,
Yes, that is it.
New wine
Right.
Right.
When them did appoint the new commissioner head, the rest of the board should have dissolved. And she picked people outside of all of those. The first thing, this man where did a Peter Philip advisor should not be there after when the head left other there. He should not be there. Greg Christie might have 3 or 4 months left. Should ask him to step aside. And I knew all of this problem that we are facing now. Is this almost the same set of people that was there with when Pantana, that was there that went to the parliament and
remember,
Carl,
Yes.
their appointments and the staggered ending of their appointments is as a result of the law.
I understand that, Chevron, and I'm not cutting on you, Chevron. I understand that. But Chevron, from what happened for the last 3.5 years with that whole body, from the head was going, the rest of them should have stepped aside. Dissolve the board. All of this wouldn't come up but now.
But you know, one of the things we'll call is that in a lot of instances where boards are concerned or bodies like these, we tend to have a staggered shift of people. So we don't get rid of everybody. Yes.
I hope I understand that. But there's a check Greg Christie. Anyhow, before I forgot, keep your ears very close to the ground this week to next week. A press conference is about to release something. You remember one story that happened in a New Kingston? Keep it. That's all I am saying on that. Keeping your ears closed.
So who leaked information to you?
But Carl, information. Carl, okay. You can bust it on air. Yes.
You hear what me are telling us. And all you see the lady where them did push out. I will ask her to see if she can hold her asylum somewhere before that press conference. That's where I'm leaving it tonight. That's saying nothing much more on that.
People. You clearly have your sources.
4 people did decide to send Andrew Holness to prison, and people never have them ways. And when a lot of us did that telling a long time, say the Integrity Commission bought out, tell we say how foolish is that. Well, something is about to leach now. Getting yourself ready. Good night. Good night.
All right, Carl. Thank you so much. Yes, indeed.
Good night.
Good night, Carl. Thank you so much. Yes.
Well, we just have a little bit of information coming in here. It's an update regarding the selection exercise for Western Westmoreland and part of the
yes.
GLP. It says the Secretariat of the Jamaica Labour Party intends to refer Dr. Garfield Jones to its selection committee and Garfield James to its selection committee and central executive as its candidate for Western Westmoreland. The referral is to be made following a selection exercise in the constituency on Sunday, which resulted in Dr. James emerging with a majority of the votes. It says the Jamaica Labour Party General Secretary Dr. Horace Chang is thanking the two participants in the democratic process, Dr. James and Moreland Wilson.
The party is also thankful to all workers and delegates who participated in the exercise. Dr. Chang says he's confident that unity will prevail among the Jamaica Labour Party family in Western Westmoreland. The Jamaica Labour Party General Secretary also says he remains confident in the candidate selection process being deployed by the party, which presents an opportunity for party workers and delegates to make their voices heard.
It says the Jamaica Labour Party General Secretary also says he remains confident in the candidate selection process being... Oh, sorry, I'm repeating
The
that.
processes.
It says the processes involving a constituency audit, polling, consultation with the workers and delegates, and a selection exercise. Dr. Chang notes that the processes reiterate that democracy is alive and well in the Jamaica Labour Party. So
there we
it
have
would
it.
seem that matter is settled.
Yes.
The caretaker and the prospective candidate for the Jamaica Labour Party for Western Westmoreland going forward is going to be Dr. Garfield James.
So we have Faithful on the line. Good evening, Faithful.
Good evening, Prof. Good evening, Shavan.
Yes.
I think the chairman for the IC is a breath of fresh air. So far, I'm very much impressed with the ruling and everything. The case that you have in your cover story this evening, and Nadine Spence and Hugh Small, when Mr. Gordon said in the Parliament that he agreed that for us to become a republic, and that they both agree for us to move away to become a republic, was it the fact that it was that feeling between the Pretty Council and the removing of the monarch?
I know from the outset that Madam Marlene Malahoo Ford had suggested that they did not want to move along that path, that they wanted to have it as a phased matter with the matters requiring a referendum being handled first. I know that was the belief and I won't say the agreement, but that was what was put forward by the government at the outset. And one would assume that was the process that they agreed upon on the part of the People's National Party when they elected their members to be placed on the Constitutional Reform Committee.
Because I remember everybody was very jubilant and said, yes, it's time to move away, it's time to get this thing done.
Yes.
And I think Mr. Gordon is speaking to the Parliament, said, let us move to the thing that we agree on. Not only him, but several other persons. Let us move to the thing that we agree on. And what I know everybody agree on, that we should become a republic.
Yes.
Because in my mind, right, I'm from the Caribbean Court of Justice now, but in my mind, the Pretty Council was always a thorny issue. And so they decided, in my mind, from the set goal, was that we're going to move to a republic, and then in the second stance, as it was told to us, that we're going to take up the Caribbean Court, we're going to take up the Pretty Council next. But so I was surprised when Mr. Smart said that they take it out at the moment, and that's a called the thorny issue. But
that's not what
the
he's suggesting is that he believes it would be impractical to try and separate the two issues and proceed with them separately. That is his concern. But my counter to that is, if that was the concern going in on his part, as in Casey Small's part, why take part in the process at all?
Right.
But I think the point you're making, though, is that we all had been working on the ground, people on the ground, with the idea that the process, there was some consensus, and that the process was going forward in a positive sense, and we will see some resolution. Isn't that what you got from the... Yes.
That's what I got from that we were going to do this thing in phases.
Yes.
Is it first I'm hearing this in that when Mr. Smart said that they took it out at the point in time. That's why I asked the question. When Mr. Gordon speak in the Parliament, was it deal? Was the deal when they said let us move on the thing that we agree on? Was it after that they took out the country, Mr. Small, and they put the country from the Republic?
No.
That's what I'm clear. And at the end of the day, we can use all the legislation we want. It's going to come down to politics. Because if the two parties have to come to agreement, and if they don't come to agreement, then it's not going to happen.
Well, the Constitution sets it up that way, We can't move without the Constitution being ratified. And so the Constitution sets it up. But what do the people want, though? What do the people want?
So what is the sense of this dancing around?
But I mean, at the end of the day, that is another matter that we seem to not have any agreement on.
Right.
Should we put it to the people? Should we just proceed without consulting the people as to what they want as their final appellate court? All of these matters are unsettled. And I just feel that if we're going to then, even if you have this principle that you feel that the matters are inexorably entwined, why would we want to delay the removal of the monarch on a basis where we do not have consensus, where we seem to be torn in two separate directions as to what should be the final appellate court? Why would we then make that essentially the final decider as to when we leave the Queen's domain?
King is now the king. The Queen left, and we are now with the king, and we're still struggling with the matter.
After this point, Professor Hope, when we do inevitably try to get back to this process, it could be a queen again for all I know.
And that's the point. Yes.
Because I think I heard Diane with it first, and at first I was very happy and said yes, we're gonna do this and we're gonna get along with it. But I think I heard Diane with it first, and Diane said, "Boy, she's not too sure if in our lifetime it's going to become a reality." Because the way we operate, everybody wants a pound of flesh.
And I think also, that people want to be the group under whose leadership of government it happens. That impression is there.
So I don't know what Mr. Smart was playing. I tried to pretend that at the end of the day, it's going to come down to two things: both the opposition and the government. So you're going to come on the politics. You're going to come on the politics, not politics at the end of the day.
The people of Jamaica, want this decolonization process to be finished, because this is something that is important to people of Jamaica. Yes, our identity revolves around it. We want to feel that as Jamaican people, we are now fully sovereign. This is something that is important to us because we have a lot of places in the Caribbean that are still colonies and dependencies of a lot of European countries. We have done a lot of work, and we really need to push from the ground up to ensure that our parliamentarians on both sides of the House, opposition and government, do what is necessary for the people of Jamaica. Very important.
I love the way that Nadine said it. I think Nadine said the right thing. When he said that all over the Caribbean, and it's going to be a thorny issue when they take both of them together. The pretty council and removing this. I think the best thing to done it in phases. And if we cannot trust each other to do it one way or another, do we expect that election canon, the PNP win or whoever win, that the Labour Party in opposition, they're just going to fall in line and do what they say?
Unlikely, Faithful. That's another problem. But thank you for the call,
Thank
Faithful.
you so much for the call, Faithful, yes.
Cleveland, good evening.
Hi, Cleveland.
Yes,
Cleveland.
Mr. Hope and Siobhan. What I remember about the discussion in the Constitution, it seemed like it was going quite well. And just as them to sign off, apparently the opposition just tell the two people that were there not to sign. And there's where they break down. Right?
Yes.
Because he wasn't even supposed to be at the meeting and him end up there. Mr. Golden. You see? And start muddle up the whole thing then. Because since as they agreed to do it in a phased way, why couldn't continue that way? You see? But they want to push the Caribbean court down our throat. Because it suits them. But we see a lot of examples that the Caribbean is not together. Lots of examples.
What do you mean by that when you say the Caribbean is not together?
They're not together, Miss Hope. They're not together, you know that.
Mm-hmm.
Barbados, they don't just have a face card, they're not really supporting us. Trinidad, all of them, you see, they're not really working together. You see, and I don't see that coming for now.
Well, we have a responsibility.
Then that's the piecemeal thing.
But you agree that we have a responsibility in Jamaica as Jamaicans to move our country to the next level.
Yes. But it mustn't be political or to suit one or the other.
We can live in
Must
hope.
do the right thing.
We can live in hope about it not being political. We can live in hope.
The thing is, I understand the need for consensus, but this whole notion that it must not be political, it's a political process. So I've always found it curious when people say it should not be political. I understand what they're saying, What they're saying is that it should be a bipartisan move forward.
Exactly.
But I think it's an unavoidably political issue.
Yes.
Especially when we have such fundamental differences about which direction we want to take the country in terms of the final appellate court. There is going to be a certain level of political consideration in that. But I thought that we were working toward a consensus on those political matters and how they would be dealt
with. It did reach far.
But I think, in the history of the constitutional reform process, this is the furthest that we have reached. So we have to give ourselves kudos for that and hope the next round we can carry it to the ultimate conclusion. Because we really got very far this time.
And if you notice it,
yes,
those two representatives for the PNP was in that committee. You don't hear another word from them from that day, Mr. Golden take it over. Not a word from them. You don't hear what was their understanding and so on. It was gone under the ground. I was in the news from last night, I think, and I see this one of these councillors in St. Anne blasting must be one of the top civil servants in the municipality and telling her to go because the people and don't love you. If that did happen with Mr. Warmington also, everybody would be out this evening talking about it. I noticed that I don't hear it come over in the news or anything. What happened to Nationwide? I never see it. I hear about it.
I've not heard about that one, but yes. It's political. It's political silly season, so a lot of things are going to happen.
No, but the lady is not a political person. I think she's one of the civil servants there.
Yes.
You see, those people who run the municipalities, there's 5 o'clock. I don't forget what they have put them as. But what I'm saying, you don't hear no one come up with it and call out to them. And I hope by tomorrow the ladies them coming out saying something.
All right, Cleveland.
Yes. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. Yes, we may hear. We have Anne on the line. Good evening, Anne. Good evening.
Hi. Good evening, Dr. Hope and Siobhan.
Good evening, Anne.
Good evening.
Okay, I want to just add my little 2 cents with what is happening with the IC. And I really think that the current talk of the happenings at the IC, no one has addressed the elephant in the china shop, which is, I agree that Jamaica is a small country and by extension the Caribbean, so we will know people who are in high places having gone to school with them and be even friends. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the PNP made the IC a political football and used it for the past 3 years, where you had various persons in the PNP preempting what the IC was doing, and therefore brought the institution into disrepute. And we should probably encourage our politicians not to do that. Do not politicize these bodies that are supposed to be impartial, because had they not done that, then they could be friends with whoever and it not be a problem. And it's not just the politicians that did it, but what Mr. Christie did as well did not enhance the impartiality of what the IC should be. And in terms of justice and all of that and fairness, the IC ought to be above reproach. So nobody is questioning whether or not Mr. Lawrence is capable or not, but the mere fact that the PNP politicized or use it on their campaign on the political platform, that is what is the problem.
So Anne, you're saying that the Pandora's box was opened and we can't close it, or we are having a difficulty closing it.
We're going to have a difficulty closing it, and in doing that, it is sad that somebody's professional reputation and ethics and all of that is coming to bear. That should not have been so. Yes, the PNP, when they did what they did about the illicit 6 and 8 and everything else, and they're coming out to this and they're coming out to that, they should have left it alone and allowed the IC to do its job. That's my opinion.
I hear you, Anina, but let me just say that I am at the very least comforted by the response of the new commissioner, in that the very least she acknowledged the concern and said she is willing to look into the matter, provided that evidence can be forthcoming on the issue. I suppose this can only be said as my opinion, but I suspect that the former chairman would not have been as accommodating in his response had it been brought before him.
It's admirable what she's trying to do, but I don't know if she's going to accomplish much, because I don't know if any compelling evidence can be brought that will satisfy JLP supporters, PNP supporters, and no P supporters. So perhaps we should just try to step away from all of that, a clean slate, and we start to rebuild the integrity, in quotation, of the IC.
When you say step away from all of that, and what do you mean? Because you say rebuild, step away from all of that, start afresh?
Step away meaning, no, that's not what I mean. Not appoint anybody that has clear connections with any political figure. We all have our political leanings, whether or not we want to admit it or not, right? But we should not have one that the entire country knows about. I should be able to do my job, and my professional integrity not be questioned based on who I know, where I work, and who I'm associated with.
I find it strange that you limit that matter to the Integrity Commission alone, because I've known over the years where the People's National Party has attacked several individuals in certain positions based on their past political and personal affiliations. So as I said, I believe last week Friday, I'm not taken aback by the Jamaica Labour Party using a similar approach when it comes to certain matters, because this has always been a tactic used in terms of the People's National Party.
And what the Jamaica Labour Party did, they have every right to do it based on what has transpired over the last couple of years. Yes? So, as Dr. Hopper said, I said the Pandora's box was open, and it's gonna be very difficult to close it.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much
Anne.
for your call, and have a good evening, indeed. Yes. And Siobhan, this is an issue that is going to continue to take up space in the public domain, because people are interested in the outcome, you think?
Oh, definitely, especially so close to an election. This is going to be a very touchy matter. I don't know if there's going to be any Integrity Commission reports coming between now and the date of that election, but I can imagine if such reports come forthwith, they're going to be heavily scrutinized by the public and the political directorate in terms of what they impact. But ultimately, listeners and viewers, as I said, I am still comforted based on the behavior of the current chairman, because she at the very least, was accommodating in her response. And though I am concerned with this matter about her suggesting that she needs more evidence to be provided outside of the remit of the commission, because I don't know how you can expect the public to provide that in additional evidence, because the Interior Commission still acts in a somewhat insular and isolated manner from the rest of the Jamaican people and the political directorate. So any additional evidence that would need to come to light would have to be ferreted out in terms of an internal investigation. So I don't know how this called for, well, you need to provide more information to us for us to go further. I don't know if that is the right approach to take. But at the very least, she did not simply shut the door and said there's nothing to see here.
So we are at a stalemate for right now.
Precisely. But
Yes.
that's where we have to leave it, listeners. It is 7:59, and thank you for joining us this evening. Mikkel, Scorpion, Andrew Shady, Juliet Sanchez,
Marcos, we have a lot of people there. Man, what is Neely, year 12, Rob, there's a lot of people there.
Nelly.
Is Nelly?
Yes,
Leroy
Jacqueline